Hey there, so today we will be discussing nudity in the Renaissance art. We will be diving deeper into the topics of its evolution and symbolic meaning throughout the Renaissance. While it is unfortunate that I wasn't able to present this project to my classmates and present in front of a class, there are certainty a lot of things that I learned while reading about this topic. I was actually pretty fascinated by this topic and was surprised that it's still available for me when I was picking topics actually. So really the reason why I was so interested in this topic was because of the question of why were the people in the Renaissance so fascinated by nudity in their art? When I first started this class, I felt like every other piece of art in the Renaissance had some form of nudity. So I'm going to be discussing the evolution of this nudity in the Renaissance art and the symbolic meanings within my oral presentation. Nudity, along with the use of perspective, is one of the most important markers that separates medieval art from Renaissance art. It wasn't until the 15th and 16th centuries that nude paintings and sculptures became more prevalent and appeared more and more frequently. Similarly to today, the body in art has a variety of different meanings. For example, Euro-Christian civilization thought the naked body caused lust and sin and needed to be covered. But there's also a role in which nudity played a role in the Savior of Jesus Christ. We'll also dive deeper into the contradictory meaning of the gender roles in this art. We can see in some examples of the Pisaio family, Nicola's statue of strength, which was inspired by the Roman statues like Hercules, while his son Giovanni's prudence, based off of Venus Pudica, is shown she is cowering to herself. These two different statues have drastically different meanings and highlights the role of genders in Renaissance art, as the male shows strength and confidence while the female displays embarrassment and fear. Further, there is a sacred context of nudity involving Jesus Christ in paintings. It was by roughly 1450 that the nude form of baby Jesus had been accepted in the southern and northern Renaissance art. Although clothed Christ child continued in the 14th century, showing baby Jesus without clothes became mainstream because of some theological reasons. One reason was the focus of Christ's humanation of where God took human form in Jesus Christ. The viewers are assured that God is truly man, and the naked body proves this. Mary and her child were actually the most popular subject in Renaissance art, which explains the many variations we see of this subject throughout the Renaissance. In 1450, there were a few occasions for the nude besides for baby Jesus, but this would change with Antonio Pallaio. He was the first artist to specialize in nude, specifically the male in paintings, sculptures, and graphic arts. His famous public painting is the Martyrdom of Saint Sebastian. This was commissioned by the Pucci family for a Florentine church and was one of the largest altarpieces of its time. It highlights Sebastian only in a loincloth. Additionally, the Battle of the Nudes demonstrates that nudity sometimes signifies primitive humanity. Because Pallaio, this resulted to be for the nude to be more prominent in art, and that the naked body was an integral part of an artist's training. However, probably the most important development and diffusion of the nude in the Renaissance art was the advent of the artistic print. Since making print cost much less than the paintings, artists were given much more freedom to explore, innovate, and try something new, allowing artists to truly express their creative self. Andrea Mantegna developed prints like the Bacchanal with a wine vat, and the Battle of the Sea Gods, which showed a non-religious subject matter with a naked cast. These did not fit into the traditional theological categories and demonstrated that nudity reached a new autonomy. The nude helped show the artist's mastery, and scenes like this would not have been shown in antiquity, but the cast would rather probably have been clothed. Next, we can get into more details about the gender differences. In the Jan van Eyck Ghent altarpiece, we can see Adam and Eve on the right and left. This was created around 1426. Adam has his foot beyond the frame, both his legs are visible, and has a muscular structure. Eve, on the other hand, is shown hugging the border Only her front leg can be seen, and the surface of her flesh is highlighted. The gender difference themes that are shown are men are active and strong, while women can be passive and beautiful. Van Eyck was a founder of Northern Renaissance art and inspired many factors of the nude in Italian art. Additionally, Venus represents beauty and nudity. Sandro Botticelli's Birth of Venus shows the newborn goddess of love and beauty arriving at the shore of Cyprus. She was born nude, and the nymphs are shown dressing her, while a clear purpose was established here with beauty in the world. But soon the female nude would be used for other purposes. There was a new purpose that which erotica and different variants were used to produce and were in high demand. The female nude came to prominence by the 1500s in Venice, and by the early 16th century was furthered with the Cardassian portrait, which had images of a nude or partially nude woman. Francois Clauet's Woman in Her Bath is a significant example where the woman can be half seen. The genre seemed confined for royal mistresses and reserved for particular circumstances. The females in these courtesan pieces have features that are so simple and generic, it seems it would not have any historical people. However, there are certainly some characteristics and identifiable markers that demonstrate different meanings in the bare flesh. Albrecht Dürer made a few self-portraits of himself, and none of them had a wonderful physique. He didn't have an ideal body, but still painted it, implying that these paintings were supposed to be accurate, and nudity equals truth and honesty, where he documented his body with faults. Moreover, the use of transi is where the deceased are shown in their tomb of dead and decaying. The dead can be shown either naked or having some wraps, and you don't see a visual distinction in the gender with transi figures. Finally, we can talk about one of the most famous artists in history, and that is Michelangelo. He is one of the most famous Renaissance artists that is identified with the naked human body. There is no one who could sculpt the male body like him, and he's preferably had the muscular types, but he is very versatile in all of his artwork. In the Vatican, the Pietà shows a traditional nude piece of Jesus suffering in the nudus virtualis. Here is an unrealistic version of the human body with no marks, which really highlights his innocence. One of his most famous pieces, David, is a 7-foot tall masterpiece that embodies a hero and his body of perfection. This shows the power of authority of the piece, as there is no shame of total nudity. Michelangelo thought that nudity was very important, and this could be explained with his quote, who is barbarous as not to understand that the foot of a man is nobler than his shoe, and that the skin is nobler than the sheep that he is clothed with, and is not able to estimate the worth and degree of each thing accordingly. Clearly, Michelangelo thought that nudity was very honorific, and because the body was God's greatest creation. This is further shown in the Sistine Chapel with David at the center of the ceiling. There would be many more artists in the Renaissance who would try to replicate Michelangelo's style and technique. Additionally, there was an outcry by the Pope with the nudity in the Last Judgment scene. The Catholic Church saw nudity in a negative light, which led toward a lot of criticism for this Last Judgment scene. The Pope said that there should be no nudity in such a holy place, but this really disgruntled Michelangelo. Luckily, the piece is up in its entirety today, but the Catholic Church did have people who were going to cover some of the nudity in the Last Judgment after Michelangelo's death. But this ended up not being the case, and they did stop this. Alright, so there's obviously much more you can get into with nudity in the Renaissance art, as it is such a big topic and so much can be discussed about that. But here is really the main topics in the Renaissance, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening to my presentation and really how the Renaissance art and nudity coexisted and the different meanings and evolution of the topic came to be.